My name's Jameson, and let me start with this. When your ex-wife suddenly contacts you after 15 years and says, "We need to talk," you better brace yourself. Because whatever follows, it won't be easy. It won't be some casual stroll down memory lane or a harmless check-in. No, when someone who once left your life in pieces reappears with those words after over a decade of silence, there's really only one thing to expect: more wreckage. The moment I saw her message, my chest seized up. I didn't even have to open it. Just seeing her name and those 4 words told me everything. Whatever she had to say was going to stir something in me that I thought I'd buried. Because here's the truth. When someone has already broken you once and walked away without a second glance, their return rarely brings peace. It brings the kind of honesty that cuts deep, the kind you don't want but can't ignore. And that's where this story begins. 15 years ago, I was a married man. My wife, Valentina, and I had a 3-year-old son who lit up my world. At the time, I was completely immersed in a scientific research project, one that demanded every ounce of my time, my focus, my energy. I was part of a specialized team working on a system that could potentially revolutionize the way we detect microplastics in human blood. The work was intense, exhausting, and it required long days, longer nights, and sometimes even months away from home. We were racing against the clock and working under the pressure of limited funding. I sat down with Valentina more than once and explained how crucial this project was, not just for me personally, but for the future I was trying to build for all of us. Every time, she'd nod, say she understood, and encourage me to keep going. I believed her. Then one day, completely out of the blue, a man showed up at my lab. I'll never forget the awkward glances my coworkers exchanged when he asked to speak to me alone. He was Valentina's lawyer. Without a word of explanation, he handed me an envelope. Divorce papers. That's how I found out. I froze. My mind couldn't make sense of it. Divorce? I left everything behind right then and drove straight home, heart pounding, not knowing what I'd say, only that I needed to see her, to understand. When I walked through the door, she was sitting on the couch. I pleaded with her to talk to me, to explain why she was doing this. I reminded her that even while I was away for work, I never stopped supporting her or our son, not financially, not emotionally. I kept the bills paid, the house maintained, and made sure they were taken care of. But she didn't even flinch. No emotion. She just said, "From now on, speak to my lawyer." That single sentence shattered something inside me. Not just my heart, my entire sense of reality. I couldn't believe it. I told myself she was just overwhelmed, that we could still talk it out. I refused to sign the papers. I held on to hope that there was still a path back, but she had already moved on. Instead of a conversation, she took it to court. And that's when everything truly unraveled. In court, she didn't just stand by a decision. She turned me into the villain. She spun a version of the story that made it look like I had abandoned my family in pursuit of my career. She left out the part about the money I sent, the daily calls I made, the sacrifices I lived with. In her version, I was the absent husband who just disappeared. Sitting in that courtroom, listening to lies I couldn't fully disprove, was one of the most humiliating and gut-wrenching experiences of my life. The system didn't want nuance. It wanted simplicity. She won. She got full custody of our son. She kept the house. And I was left with nothing but the few things I could carry in the lab, which soon became the only place I had left to live. I moved in, not just because I had nowhere else to go, but because I didn't want to be anywhere else. My access to my own son was reduced to a court-scheduled arrangement. The boy I used to see every day became a calendar event I had to earn permission for. And as painful as that was, what hurt even more was this. Despite being cut out of my family, I was still required to pay child support like clockwork. The irony? Crushing. She ended our marriage because I worked too much, and yet the court demanded I keep working to provide the money that work created. No one seemed to care why I was doing it, or what I was sacrificing. They only looked at the numbers. I had lost both my home and the family that once made it whole, yet I was still expected to bankroll a life I was no longer part of. The divorce didn't just knock me down, it came at a time when I was already on my knees. The research I'd been pouring my soul into had drained most of my savings. Every setback in the lab cost more than time. It cost money, and with every failed experiment, It felt like we were drifting closer to shutting the entire operation down. There were days I felt completely broken, days I stared into the mirror and didn't recognize who I'd become. But somehow, between my team's encouragement and a few steadfast family members, I stayed upright. They reminded me that the work we were doing still mattered, that I still mattered. And somewhere deep down, beneath the pain and the anger, I believed them. Eventually, I stopped asking why she'd done it. I stopped looking for answers that wouldn't come. Instead, I channeled every ounce of heartbreak and fury into the project. But emotional numbness came with a price. I locked myself off from the world. For years. Relationships? Not a chance. The thought of letting anyone close again felt like inviting disaster. I couldn't risk being torn apart all over again. Still, I didn't run from my responsibilities. Month after month, without fail, I sent the child support payments, even when it meant borrowing or stretching every cent I had. No matter how hard it got, I never missed a payment. He was still my son, even if she tried to shut me out of his life, even if she fed him lies about who I was. I refused to abandon him. I wouldn't let her take that piece of me, too. I had already lost almost everything, and a part of myself along with it, but I held tight to the one thing I had left, purpose. If I gave up on the project now, then all the sacrifice, all the loss, would have been for nothing. So I kept going, step by painful step, often in the dark, without knowing if we'd ever reach the finish line. Then, one day, something changed. After years of struggle, setbacks, and sleepless nights, our system finally started to work. The data was solid, reliable. Our tech could detect microplastics in human blood faster and more affordably than anything else out there. We tested it again and again across multiple conditions. Every time, it delivered, and I still remember the moment we realized we'd done it. I didn't cry, not because it wasn't emotional, but because I didn't have anything left in me to cry with. The breakthrough caught attention fast. First, it was murmurs from the medical community. Then came the articles. After that, a major pharmaceutical company reached out. They ran their own evaluations, confirmed our results, and offered to buy the entire system. The buyout was enormous. For the first time in years, I could breathe. I was no longer living in the lab, no longer wondering how I'd survive the next month. I had financial freedom. I could finally begin imagining a life beyond the microscope and late-night experiments. I could think about peace, maybe even happiness. But just as I was settling into that calm, Valentina found out about the buyout. We hadn't spoken in years beyond what was required for child support. Then, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. Her lawyer, again. This time, she wanted more. More child support. More money. And just like before, the system that's supposed to be balanced showed me exactly where it stood. The court didn't even blink. They sided with her without a second thought. I tried to explain. I hadn't missed a single payment. I had upheld every part of the agreement. But none of that mattered. I was a father. She was a mother. That was enough for them. So I complied. Again, even with all the success, with my name attached to something that could actually change lives, I still couldn't shake the weight of everything that came before it. The past had left marks that even progress couldn't fully cover. But for the first time in ages, I started to consider something I'd pushed away for years. Companionship. Not marriage. That word still made me uneasy. But connection. I was tired of being alone. I craved warmth. Quiet mornings. Simple conversations. I'd been living in survival mode for so long that just the idea of being seen, of being known, felt like a luxury. So I put myself out there. Cautiously. Slowly. Eventually, I met someone. She was kind, soft-spoken, and had this calming presence that felt like a balm to all my jagged edges. She didn't ask too much of me emotionally, which, frankly, was a relief. I was upfront from the start. I wasn't looking for marriage. And to my surprise, she understood. We built something small, gentle, peaceful. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could walk through the door and not feel like I was stepping into a battlefield. It didn't erase everything that had come before. It didn't fix the wounds, but it helped ease the sting. While I was still healing, I was finally, slowly, learning how to live again. I tried. Again and again, I reached out to my son, checking in, inviting him over, trying to carve out moments that could become memories. But Valentina, she made it nearly impossible. She filled his ears with stories that painted me as someone I never was, a villain, a stranger, and heartbreakingly, it worked. Each time I sat across from him and tried to have a real conversation, I saw the uncertainty in his eyes. He heard me, sure, but it was like I was being measured against another version of myself, one built from whispers and resentment. He didn't know who to believe. There were two fathers in his life, the one she described, and the one sitting right in front of him, and that tore me apart. I kept wondering why he couldn't see how hard I was trying, that I never walked away from him, even when it felt like I was being pushed out. I kept showing up, quietly, steadily, hoping that one day the truth would rise above the noise. Soon, he'll turn 18. Legally, the child support ends. Not because I want to stop supporting him. I never did. But because for years, Valentina twisted that support into a weapon, a way to keep control. The financial burden wasn't just heavy, it was cruel. The system never once asked how I was doing. It just took. And I kept paying, even when I was scraping the bottom of the barrel, even when I had nothing left. And still, here I am, picking up the pieces, trying to rebuild, hoping that someday my son will see the truth for himself. Then, one day, 15 years after the divorce, I got a message from her. Just 4 words. We need to talk. Everything inside me froze. My mind ran wild. Was our son in trouble? Was she sick? Hurt? The message gave me nothing. But even after everything, I couldn't ignore it. Some part of me, old muscle memory, maybe, still responded to her voice. I didn't waste time. I called, asked her what this was about. But instead of giving me an answer, she said, "It's better said in person." Her tone was soft, almost gentle, and that threw me off more than anything. She hadn't spoken to me like that in over a decade. I didn't trust it, but I went anyway, because if it had anything to do with our son, I needed to know. When I stepped into her house, it was like walking into another reality. She greeted me with warmth, offered me something to drink, asked if I was hungry, like we were old friends reconnecting. I declined. I just wanted answers. We sat down. She looked at me for a long time, searching for where to begin. And then she spoke. I wasn't ready for what she said. She told me that during our marriage, my long hours buried in work made her feel invisible, like I'd emotionally checked out. And maybe, in hindsight, there was truth to that. I was consumed by the weight of my ambitions. But what she said next, I never saw coming. She said she thought I was cheating, had no proof, just a creeping insecurity that grew into obsession. And instead of talking to me, she acted on that fear. She cheated, not once, not in a moment of weakness, but over and over, a full-blown affair. And then, when she finally realized I hadn't betrayed her, that I had only ever been working, she was already too far gone. The affair had a life of its own. And she didn't come clean. She left, filed for divorce, painted me as the unfaithful one. But the man she left me for, he turned out to be violent, controlling. Everything she thought she wanted turned to poison. And then she told me the real reason for the message. She was dying. Cancer. She didn't have much time, and she needed to unburden herself. She apologized, said it was all her fault, that I'd done nothing wrong, that I had been a good man, the one who stayed, the one who never gave up. And I just sat there, numb. This woman, the one who once meant everything to me, was suddenly confessing to everything, asking me to forgive her, to let it go. But how could I? How do you forgive someone who shattered your life and let you carry the blame for 15 years? I looked at her, and all I could say was, "Did you ever stop to think about what this did to our son? To me? You burned down our family and walked away." I didn't care about her diagnosis. I didn't care about her regrets. I didn't care that her time was running out. She had already taken so much from me. The years I spent alone, the guilt I carried, the hollow, quiet ache that became my everyday life. All of it because of her. If not for the people who pulled me from the edge, the few who believed in me, pushed me to keep going, I don't know where I'd be. Honestly, I might not be here at all. That night, back at home, I sat on the edge of my bed, replaying everything she said. 15 years. 15 years I thought I had failed. 15 years of believing that maybe I hadn't been enough. But it wasn't me. It never was. She had been the one who broke us, the one who betrayed everything we built. And you'd think knowing the truth would bring some kind of peace. It didn't. There was no closure, just confirmation. Cold, bitter, final. I'm not going to lie to you and say I forgave her. I didn't. Maybe one day. Maybe not. People treat forgiveness like a button you just press. But unless someone has taken a sledgehammer to your life and then walk away with a smile, you don't get it. Forgiveness isn't easy. It isn't cheap. And sometimes the wound is too deep to close. All I care about now is my son. Rebuilding something real with him. Being present, even if it's late. I know she poisoned his heart against me. I see it in his eyes sometimes, that flicker of doubt. But is nearly grown now, old enough to start asking his own questions. Old enough to recognize the difference between the story and the truth. To everyone listening, I won't pretend this ends with a tidy lesson. Sometimes life doesn't reward the one who did everything right. Sometimes the person who broke it all walks away with the house, the child, and the sympathy. But I'm still standing. She didn't take everything. So here's my only advice. Pray. Pray hard. Not for wealth. Not for luck. But that you never marry the wrong person. Because marrying the wrong one isn't just a bad choice. It's a punishment. One that keeps collecting interest long after they're gone. If this story hit home, do me a favor. Share it. Support the channel. It means more than you know. Thanks for listening.